Hey there, welcome to CodeChef. Today we are going to be discussing the project Rock Paper Scissors from our course Python Projects for Beginners. So let's see how this game works. It is a simple game of rock, paper, scissors, which we all know how it works. So let's just see what our end product should look like. Let's say I give rock. Okay, I have gotten a tie. Let me give rock again. So you can see that the option chosen by the computer is different each time, telling us that it is random. So let's say I give something not related to rock, paper, scissors, like something like CodeChef. So as you can see, it's giving us an error message because we can only input rock, paper or scissors, not any random word like CodeChef or any other word. Now that we saw how the end of the project should look like, let's look at the flow for this particular project. There will be 3 rounds in the game, and for each round these steps should happen. First, we'll obviously take the user input, whether the user wants to give rock, paper or scissors, and then we are going to validate whether the input given by the user is actually rock, paper or scissors and not something arbitrary. Like let's say previously, as I showed, I gave an input as CodeChef and then we got an error message saying that this is an invalid choice. So that way we should validate the input given by the user, or else we won't be able to compare them and give an overall decision whether the computer won or the user won. So as for the computer, we will be generating a random option. Simply what we will be doing is we'll have a list which contains rock, paper and scissors, and then we are going to use the random module from Python, and we are going to use the random function from it, and we are going to randomly choose and give that as the computer output, and with that output we are going to compare with the user input, and after that we will declare the winner, and after that we'll update the score of the particular round. At the end of 3 rounds you should declare which person is the winner, because this is the best of 3. So this over here is basically pseudocode. That is, it allows us to understand how the code works, or what kind of flow it follows, or what kind of order it follows. And we can use pseudocode to depict how an entire project works, or maybe a task or a particular function. So let's just arrange this pseudocode in a way that it makes sense so that we can proceed further with the code. So this particular pseudocode is to check whether the user has given correct option. That is, if user has actually given rock, paper or scissors, and not some arbitrary name or something number or whatever. So let's rearrange this pseudocode over here so that it makes sense. So let's just read through first. First, are we going to store the input in a string? No. First, we will be asking the user for their input, because without input, what are you going to store in the string? It has to be either rock, paper or scissors. So this has to come first, so we're going to drag this up over here, and then we're going to store the input in a string. So these two are in the correct place. Let's look at the next two. So compare and check if input is anything other than rock, paper or scissors, give an error message and ask for user input again. This might be correct, but we need to read the rest of the pseudocode so that we can arrange it properly. Let's see the last option. While storing the input, convert all characters to lowercase to handle rock, rock, rock like inputs. So clearly this comes above this, because first we'll have to make the input given by the user lowercase if it's proper. And then after that we're going to check whether the user has given any input other than rock, paper or scissors, or else we're going to give an error message. Let's just run this and see if it's correct. So yeah, it's correct over here, and we have our explanation also over here. So in this particular subtask, we are going to be looking at the random options, like how the computer chooses randomly from a list. So as I told previously, we will have a list of all the input possible, and then we are going to import the random module, which is not shown over here. And in that random module, we have this random.choice function, which will basically return a random value from this list. So this is how we are going to make the computer generate, or not exactly generate, you could say. We are going to make the computer choose between rock, paper and scissors, thereby making the game unpredictable. So we have one more pseudocode over here. Let's see what this pseudocode is for. It's for updating the score. So we have to compare the input given by the user and the computer, because let's say both give scissors, then both are equal. Let's say user gives scissors and the computer gives us paper. In this case, scissors is bigger than paper. So that's why the computer will have to compare them to see which is bigger, or in this case which defeats which. And basically in the end we are going to update the score for each round. So we can see over here what we have is basically a bunch of if-else conditions over here, and if you look at if-else conditions, always the first condition will start with an if, no matter what. So automatically the first option will be correct in first place. So let's look at what the computer should do if this particular condition holds true. This is false, this is a else condition, this is a else if condition, and yeah, let's read this. Then the round is a tie, no change in score for the round. Which is true, because if user option is same as computer option, it should be a tie. Hence this will be second. And then afterwards we have to check whether else if comes first or else comes first. So in else if conditions, we know that it should always start with an if, and it need not have an else, but then it cannot end with an else if. That is, else if has to come in between if and else. Like how many ever else ifs you have, it should come in between if and else. It cannot be after else. So clearly else if will come above. And let's read this else if. If user option is rock when computer option is paper, or user option is paper when computer option is scissor, or user option is scissor when computer option is rock. So this is clearly a condition where the computer is winning against the user. And this one over here says user wins the round and increase score by 1. Which is not true, because over here computer is winning. Hence the remaining option over here, then the computer wins the round and increases the computer score by 1. This is true. So we will drag this up. Then we have our else case and our final option. Let's submit and see if this is right. So this is correct. So let's look at our first subtask over here. In this first subtask, we will have to create a get user choice function, and then in that function we have to validate the user input. That is, you have to take input from the user and convert it to lowercase, and it has to be only rock, paper or scissors. So first we're going to import the random module from Python, and then we're going to initialize two variables, uScore, which is basically user score, and then computer score, which is basically computer score. And then we're going to define the get user choice function, and this particular line over here is to explain to the programmer that what this particular function does, or to, in this case, explain whoever is coding over here what this particular function should do. So first we're going to run an infinite loop. So what while true basically does over here is it goes into an infinite loop, and then we're going to have the variable user choice in which we're going to take the input from the user, and then we have two functions over here, dot strip and dot lower. So what do these two do? Dot strip basically removes any kind of white space from the input. Let's say I give as space rock, or maybe rock space. It's gonna remove the space from rock. And then in dot lower, what we will be doing is basically, let's say I give input as a rock. So to compare two strings, what the computer does is it checks the ASCII value of each character in the string. But the ASCII value of capital R and the ASCII value of small r are different. So when the computer compares it, it's gonna give as null, that is, it's not equal. And even if the user gives as rock, then the computer is gonna say invalid input. So hence we are using dot lower over here, so that it will convert this into this. So basically we have a if else condition over here, which basically checks if the user input given is actually in this list. And if it is there, we're going to return it, because then it has been validated. Or else we're going to print out this error message. And then we have main code over here, where basically we're going to print out let's play rock, paper, scissors. This is a game of best of 3. And then over here we're going to initialize n as 0. And we're going to run a loop for while n is less than 3. So why have we given this condition over here? Why n less than 3? Why not n less than 4? Because in our project we want to make sure that it is best of 3. That is, only 3 games should happen, 3 rounds should happen to determine who's the winner. Hence we have given n less than 3. Let's say it was 4 games, then we would give n less than 4. And then we're going to print out the round number. The f over here basically makes sure that whatever content is in the curly braces, its actual content will be printed out and not n plus 1. Let's say curly wasn't there, then Python will print out round n plus 1 instead of the actual value of the round. And then we're going to pass the user choice function over here, and we're going to increment the round value by 1. So let's just run this code once and see. So let me first give a proper input. So there's an error message, and we can see that this input has been validated. Let's say I give rock space. Even this input has been validated. And let's give something arbitrary now. So you can see I can't input arbitrary names. I can only input rock, paper or scissors. Let's submit this code once and see. So it has passed all the 3 test cases. Now let's move on to the next subtask.